You are under attack. Just by the mere fact that you exist, you are an obstacle to the overall agenda of the world's superior dictatorship. Please stop allowing yourselves to be distracted and realize that this is real. This is happening right now. If you find yourself investigating these coincidental phenomenons, there is a reason. Our very livelihood is about to be hijacked and controlled. The Agenda 21 is a public-private partnership, which means corporations will soon be seizing government assets. This means the very corporations that have had you enslaved to their oil, their water supply, and their medicines will now be in control of the world's entire infrastructure. If you are scared, you should be.
I want to tell you about a few of the things that I have learned during these last 5 years of intensive research. Perhaps the most startling thing that I can share with you is that all of the conspiracy theories that you've ever heard about one world government, about the UN takeover of the world, all of those conspiracies have now been laid to rest. There's nothing conspiratorial about it. It's all published.
It's a 40-chapter document to basically control the world. It's based entirely on socialist control mechanisms.
The document calls for literally reducing the human population by as much as 2/3 to 3/4 in the next 30 to 50 years. It could set aside up to 1/2 of the American landscape into wilderness areas interconnected by wilderness corridors, all surrounded by human buffer zones in which human activities are highly regulated. That is very, very clear in these United Nations documents that they want to set up a regulatory structure that would affect every man, woman, and child on planet Earth, and all of the control would be headquartered in the United Nations.
We are called populist trash, activists who can destroy, they say, in a moment, years of deliberation. And you're darn right. And I have been challenged on the radio and in audiences like this. Mr. Lamb, there's no such thing as a global agenda. Hey, friend, you're absolutely wrong. Here it is. It's called Agenda 21. Agenda 21. The primary document presented in Rio de Janeiro and adopted by more than 100 heads of state, including George Bush, which lays out in intricate detail all of the transformation that must take place in society in order for it to become sustainable as they define sustainability.
Sustainable development has become the popularized expression for Agenda 21. Agenda 21 is the 1992 United Nations Rio Declaration on the Environment and Development.
It is the agenda for the 21st century you're living in today. For a brave new world where everything that you cherished and held true will no longer exist.
Scratching my head here, what on earth is going on? Human population is to be resettled into the remaining 25% of the land, into communities that are described as sustainable communities.
I went to these committees at the request of some people who told me that I needed to understand what was going on, and I came back and I said, this is craziness. This is so silly. It has no chance of having any effect on our society. Well, I was wrong. The United States government's support for sustainable development, Agenda 21, is very clear. In 1992, while the Rio Conference was going on, George Bush, then president, was there where he executed the Agenda 21 protocols on behalf of the United States and brought it back to Washington, D.C. Within a year, Bill Clinton, by executive order, no congressional review, established the President's Council for Sustainable Development. This is a map of the Wildlands Project. To explain the map, the red are areas that are to be off limits to human beings. No resource development, no human activity. If you live there, you won't. The yellow areas are the areas for major control of all human activity. If you live there, you won't. The black areas, the black dots, are the smart growth zones. That's where human beings are to be stacked and packed in small living units along rail tracks. The smart growth program ultimately has jobs assigned and children cared for by the state.
The question has been asked many times how the people who are perpetrating these things expect to do this and make it last. And the answer to that is that you steal a generation of children and you indoctrinate them so that they accept these ideas and they become global citizens in the coming global village.
Our children are mathematically illiterate on purpose. How do I know on purpose? Why isn't this just a basic bad idea? Because the Sustainable Development Plan tells us so. Generally, more highly educated people who have higher incomes consume more resources than poorly educated people who tend to have lower incomes. In this case, more education increases the threat to sustainability. I did not believe for the longest time it was a deliberate dumbing down. I thought the dumbing down was a natural consequence of a bad idea. Folks, it's deliberate. It's deliberate.
The sustainable globalist goal is the orchestration of a planned fall of American principles, values, and lifestyles. The effect on the average American will be devastating. With modernizing technology, the ordinary person will live without independence, privacy, or substantive rights.
Another press conference that I attended was the ICLA group, the International Committee for Local Environmental Initiatives, that helps in the implementation of Agenda 21 in all of our local communities. And one of the speakers was a Harvey Reuven, who happens to be the vice chair of ICLA. And I asked him about the correlative rights that Americans derive from the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And that, of course, is your individual liberties, your private property, your freedom of speech. Asked about it clashing with Agenda 21, and you know what his response was? Individual rights must take a back seat to the collective.
Rick, what does population stabilization mean, and how do you seek to enforce that?
Well, we're not the epigones of Malthus, as some would have you believe, but the world population is a concern. The Associated Press just has an article today saying that the world population is going to reach 7 billion people by the year 2012. We're 6.7 billion people today. And so, you know, what it means for Americans is unrestrained population growth. I'm a baby boomer. I was born in the middle of the last century. The population in the country has doubled in my lifetime. Those kids in high school today are going to see 500 million people living in America. And the question we're asking is, why do we need to have this growth, and where's it coming from? And we've located the source. Of over 80% of it is coming from immigration and the children that immigrants have.
Okay, so what do you propose? I'm going to go back to the basics here, because I'm just going to let you carry on with this crazy idea that people are bad and we should have fewer of them, because I actually like people. I want to have more people. But let's say you're right, okay? How do you enforce your worldview? Is this an international body that somehow mandates population growth? I mean, China's trying that with its one-child policy, and then after the big natural disaster there, they're going, oh, maybe this isn't such a good idea after all. We're going to lose population.
Our concern is about American population growth and, of course, California. With 37 million people in California today, going to be 60 million people in the next 2 to 3 decades.
So you have no idea. So, Rick, I can't. This is driving me crazy. You're driving me crazy. Do you have a plan, Rick? You're spouting off things from an office in California. This is my question. You're saying something very controversial here, and I hope people understand what you're saying. You think there should be fewer people in the United States? I'm trying to figure out which people are the undesirable.